Hi, I'm Justin Barrett. I'm president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a psychological scientist and a former university professor. Today I want to talk about love languages. Most of us think loving is a good thing and loving well is a good thing. Of course, Jesus encouraged us to love our neighbors as ourselves. But how do we do that? How do we love effectively? How do we love impactfully? How do we love powerfully? Are there some tricks of the trade? Well, some years back, Gary Chapman wrote a book on the love languages based on his interaction with people, his counseling practices as a pastor. He suggested that there were sort of 5 basic love languages that people have. And analogous to regular languages, you might think you've got your strongest language, your native language that you use to love people. You know, the way you communicate love, if you will, is through this particular love language. And you might have a secondary one, and you've heard of some others, but you're going to be strong in maybe one or maybe 2 of these love languages. The 5 love languages that he proposed are gifts, acts of service, affectionate touch, quality time, and words of affirmation. And so then Chapman's suggestion is roughly that you're going to have a strength in 1 or maybe 2 of those areas. Those will be your native love languages. There's kind of 2 sides to this, as people have talked about it over the years, as they've sort of incorporated his language, noting that I might be especially good at using 1 or 2 of these to express love to others, but I might also be especially receptive to feeling loved through 1 or 2 of these. All right. So for instance, I might be really good at giving gifts, but I really feel loved when I get words of affirmation. Or I might be really good at acts of service, but I don't need acts of service. What I really crave from the people who say they love me is quality time or something like that. Okay. So that's the basic framework. We could talk about each of those 5 in a little more detail. But before diving into that, you might ask, which I have been asked, yeah, but what's the scientific kind of assessment of these? It's a nice tool maybe for thinking about loving each other, but how does it bear up to, say, psychometric evaluation? Do we statistically break up the world into these love languages? And the literature is mixed on this, frankly. At least my quick take of my review of the literature is that while there is some evidence that, yeah, we do have a handful of different ways in which we prefer to express love or to receive love. And there is some overlap with Chapman's 5 categories. Some studies don't find that it's perfectly these 5 categories, that maybe there's a 6th, or maybe these should be subdivided, or maybe it's the case that while these are common ways of expressing love and receiving love, that they're not really like languages in the sense that you only have one you can do. It's that you've got all of them. They're more like tools in your belt that you can bring out at different times. And we're more skilled at using one of the tools over the other tools, but we have all of the tools. So it's not that I'm not fluent in acts of service, because fluency isn't the right way to talk about it. In fact, I might not be fluent at any of them. So that's another way in which it might be disanalogous to languages. So at least psychologists, when they've started looking more carefully at this, they're not quite as convinced that these are analogous to languages, but there does seem to be something there, something helpful about Chapman's framework. And that's why I wanted to share it with you, is because I think we can, at the very least, use his 5 categories, and maybe we can add more to it. I think we can. Well, add at least a 6th. But that these 5 categories can be a useful guide for being more strategic with our relationships, more strategic with trying to really express love to other people. In a previous episode, I talked about how it is that we can figure out who's in our social network and what the levels of intimacy in that social network are. So a quick reminder, on average, people seem to have about 150 genuine personal relationships, plus or minus about 50. But within that 150, there are rings of intimacy, the tightest ring being about 5 people, the next ring out, including those 5, being about 15 people, and the next ring out, including those 15, is about 50 people. And one of the things that I've been trying to challenge myself to do better at is identify who are those 5 or those 15 people in my closer rings, and then challenging myself to really, do I love them well enough? Am I expressing my love to them appropriately? Well, to do that, not only do I need to identify them, it'd be helpful if I have some tools for doing that well. Okay. And I do find Chapman's 5 love languages as a useful, at least heuristic for examining how I am going about trying to love people. So, or some means that I can love people. I've got a coworker, for instance, who she really appreciates words of affirmation. So can I be more thoughtful about how to give her words of affirmation? I can. And one of the little tricks I do for words of affirmation is I usually keep a little stack of sticky notes in my briefcase, in my attaché thing. And whether I'm at a conference or I'm just interacting with other people and I see something that's praiseworthy about somebody, I might just scribble something on a Post-it note and then stick it on their shoulder when I walk by, or stick it on their book, or stick it on their computer, or whatever it is, so that I can give them words of affirmation in a hopefully non-creepy kind of way that then they can appreciate. They look at it and go, oh, thanks, and that's it. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to go deeper at that moment. I've written it down. And you can leave these for people. They can be sort of like time-released capsules where you can leave a sticky note that they're going to find later. And that's kind of fun. This is a technique I actually learned from my wife, from her work of doing youth ministry through Young Life, that she would write little notes for people, for the youth that she was working with, to affirm them and encourage them. And I thought, that's a cool thing. So I've picked that up as one of the ways I can do words of affirmation, because sometimes it's awkward to say it in person up front, but I try to do those too. Over time, I've tried to build my courage in just delivering words of affirmation to people directly. Well, what about acts of service? Well, there I do try to be mindful, especially the people that I live with, like my wife, of what would really help her out right now? What is something I could do for her that, even if she could do it for herself, it would be easier for me to do, maybe, that would really help her out at this time, in this moment. And I try to be mindful of those and then sort of rise to the occasion. Or maybe it's for my adult children. I'm thinking about those acts of service that I could provide. I might keep a list of those so that I can reference those at certain points. That's the nice thing about these digital devices that we have with us. They can be backup brains. Affectionate touch. There's a lot of science behind the importance of affectionate touch in releasing endorphins, oxytocin, bonding hormones of various sorts. It gives people an immune system boost. It helps them feel happier. And so they're healthier and happier if they get enough touch. Research has shown that babies especially need lots of physical touch. It's a natural kind of need that they have. Babies need their cuddles. Well, so do grown-ups. Not quite as much, but we do need that kind of physical touch. And it can be as simple as a warm handshake, a pat on the back, good old, side hug or a regular hug, whatever it is. Try to not make it creepy or inappropriate. Stroking somebody's shoulder like this. I know it seems strange. It's not something we normally do, but research has shown you do that for about 45 seconds and it has these really nice benefits in terms of endorphin release and so forth. So affectionate touch should be part of our repertoire and caring for the people around us, those that we love. Quality time. Well, that one's sort of pretty straightforward. Are we spending time with the people that we say that we love? Usually a sign of love is that we desire union with them. We desire time with them. And not just time being in the same space, but time interacting with them, attending to them. In this day and age, often our relationships are distributed. And so we have to use Zoom or we have to use a phone call or something like that to interact with some of our family and friends. Well, we ought to do that. We ought to be more intentional about that and spending actual time with them, not just leaving messages on their social media boards or whatever, but actually spending time with them. That's that quality time that is a good sign of love. And then finally, there's gift giving. Gifts as a love language. And I'm blessed by having actually a lot of people around me who are really good at it. My daughter and my wife are excellent gift givers. In fact, my daughter has even said that it's one of her superpowers, and she is really good at it. I need help. So one of the things that I've done to try to figure out how to give better gifts is I've used, again, my backup brain, my digital device, to just make notes. As I go through life, I keep one of the notes on my phone is just gift ideas for people. And when I hear them, say, oh, that's my favorite candy, or that's my favorite kind of flower, or, ooh, that's a book that I've always wanted to read, or whatever it is. I try to make notes of these things so that then when a gift giving occasion like their birthday or an anniversary or Christmas shows up, I've got ideas, a good list of ideas. Some people I know who are good gift givers actually go ahead and buy the gifts as soon as they can and store them away until an appropriate time to give the gift. And that's how it always seems like they've got a really thoughtful, appropriate gift on hand. Some don't even wait for a special occasion. You don't have to. It's just a way to say, hey, I love you and here's a present. So those are all helpful ways that we can practically put into action each of those 5 love languages and actually think that's the best way to use them. Instead of saying, I've got one language that's my go-to, it's like, how can we strengthen our muscles of loving each other well in lots of different ways? Maybe especially if you know somebody, the way that they want to be loved, but we can use lots of different techniques. And if we're just a little more intentional about it, I think it helps grow our relationships. It builds intimacy, it builds trust, it builds our community, and that's good for us, it's good for them. It's the right thing to do. So that's my suggestion on the 5 love languages. I sort of teased that I think there's a 6th. That's going to be the topic of another of these episodes. So stay tuned looking for the 6th love language. But thanks for joining me. If you've got questions, comments, topics you'd like to hear me talk about, please let us know. I'm Justin Barrett. Have a great day.